Hello, in this video I'm going to try to explain how to control the flow using in an efficient way using attributes and decides. Let's first create the entity. Okay, and we're going to need an assigned, and then we're going to make a decision based on two-way by chance. And the decision will be to, let's say, go back to some point in time, let's say a process here, or we just expose the entity. So we go from here, the process, and we connect this, that, and so right now 50% of the time the entities will have to go back to the process. I'm going to change these to minutes to avoid the queue. This module has not been edited. Okay, let's see what the assignment. At this moment I don't have an assignment. What I'm going to do is just create an attribute. This attribute, I'm going to name it my attribute. My attribute. It could be any name, right? And let's say that I use 10 as a value for the attribute. Okay, so now the decided right now is at 50%, so 50% of the time entities will go back, and then again it could go back and go back so many times, and still, because we have only 1 minute to process, this shouldn't be much of an issue, and the entities eventually flow out. If I zoom in into the decide and the dispose, I can see how many of the entities are actually going back and how many have been able to exit. All right, that doesn't necessarily solve the issue with the project, but if you have several entity types and you want them to use a different decide, different percentage for the decide, this is what we're going to do. Let's create the other entity, and let's use another assignment, and that is going to be connected to the process. So that is exactly the same, but here in the assignment I am going to make an assignment to that attribute, my attribute, and I'm going to give it a different value, let's say 5%. And by assigning 5, I enter 5, not 5%, 5. Here I'm going to decide how many of them are going to be reprocessed. And instead of using 50, I can type my attribute. And it's a percentage. So if I enter 5 in the value of the attribute, it's going to be 5%. If I enter 10 in the value of my attribute, it will be 10%. So it's still two-way by chance, but the percentage that it's used depends on the attribute of the entity that is visiting the decide. Okay, so that way you don't have to check what was the value of the entity, and we can run it, and there it is. It's running based on that percentage, right? Now I can use a similar model in which I can count how many times I have visited the process. let me make this a little smaller. To see it, but I will zoom in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to include, this is the same process, okay, the same logic. I hope this is clear. But between the process and the decide, we're going to include a new assignment here. And before this decide, we're going to create another decide. And what we're going to do here is we're going to first, we're going to create an attribute here. The attribute each one of the entities will have, and the name of the attribute is my loops. How many loops it has taken? We initialize that as 0. Okay. And we do the same thing with the other. We add, after the first time, you can just look for the attribute my loops, initialize it at 0. Okay. Now I can connect this, and what I'm going to do is, in this assignment, I am going to change the value of the attribute my loops to my loops plus 1. So whatever the value of my loop was plus 1 is going to be stored again back in my loops, the attribute, right? And that way I can count how many times the entity has come through that process. And here I'm going to decide, okay, it's going to be not two-way by chance, but two-way by condition. And it's going to be checking an attribute, which attribute? My loops. And I am going to return only if, well, I'm going to continue into the process only if it's less than or equal to, say, 3. That means that it's going to be able to do up to three loops, and that will take it to the next, which will be deciding based on the probability. And if not, let's just send it also to the dispose. So after 3 it will be destroyed, or after or before if it's decided in the second decide based on probabilities. So at most 3 times it will visit, and that would be the case. Now you can also change the value of my attribute, changing therefore the probabilities, right? So if it's going to visit the process again, and the next time the probabilities change, we can add here another sign before returning to the connect. And in this assignment, what am I going to do? I'm going to change the value of my attribute, which represents the probability of reprocess. It was originally it was 5 and 10. Let's just change it everything to be just to give a number. Let's say 12% for some reason, and that's it. So you can change the probabilities of accepting, you can change the with using an assignment here, and everything is done with very few besides and by controlling the attributes of the entities. Let's run it. There you go. The entities are flowing. Some of them are returning. Some of them are limited in the number of returns based on the loops, at most 3 times. But the second time that it visits, the attribute for probability has changed. And this is done entity by entity, considering the number of loops and the entity type. I hope you find these useful, these 3 videos for your project, and give me a call if you still have issues. Have a good day.